This lesson talks about some vocabulary words, especially the words factors, coefficients, terms, and then we're going to talk about another property. So let's first talk about the idea of coefficients. Okay, look at this, 4xy. Now what this means is 4 times the variable x times the variable y. Okay. So these make a product, and they're each factors of a product. Remember, a product is the answer when you multiply. So each of these are factors. You multiply factors to make a product. And any one factor of an expression or product of factors is called a coefficient. So if you look at this, 4 is the coefficient of xy. See here, x is the coefficient, so we can rearrange them and say they're all coefficients of each other, basically. Okay, that's not really, the biggest part is later on, or we're mostly going to use numbers. We're going to look at this. We've got 4xy, negative 15, and 81. For algebra, we have, these are numerical coefficients, so the number attached to the letters or the variables, okay? So we have 4 is a numerical coefficient, negative 15 is a numerical coefficient, and 81 is a numerical coefficient. Now we use numerical coefficients so often that all we're going to say is coefficient, meaning if I were to ask you what's the coefficient of 81xmz, you would say 81. If I asked what the coefficient was of 4xy, you would say 4, because we're assuming we're talking about the numerical coefficient. Okay, so now let's talk about the idea of a term. Okay, a term is an algebraic expression consisting, and we're going to talk about that too later. In lesson 21, I believe we're going to go through some of this vocabulary again. Okay, an algebraic expression that consists of a single variable or constant is the indicated product or quotient of variables and or constants, is the indicated product or quotient of expressions that contain variables and or constants. So when I was your age, if my teacher had just listed those 3 things, I would have tuned out and just heard a bunch of mumbling. So let me try and make sense of what the definition of a term is. Okay, let's look at this thing. This thing is an expression. It's not a sentence and it's not an equation because there are no equal signs. It's just an expression. X plus 4xym minus 6p over y plus 2 minus 8. Okay? The first term of this, a term are basically chunks. Think of a term as a chunk. Okay? This is a term. This is a term. This has 4 chunks. Okay, so this has 4 terms. So maybe even if this might help you. Terms are chunks. Okay, chunks of letters and numbers. How about that? All right, so what's up here? Let's look up here. What's the first term? The first term in this is x. The second term, or the second chunk, is 4xym. All right. The third term is, we're going to go ahead and make sure we give it the right sign, the correct sign. This sign, remember, we don't have subtraction anymore. It's just that this means negative 6p over y plus 2. So the third term is negative 6p over y plus 2. Okay. Now this negative can sit up here with the 6, or it can be out in front, and they mean the same thing. And then the last term is negative 8. Okay. Let's now move on and talk about the distributive property. Okay. There are 2 ways to evaluate this expression. Basically find the answer to it. There are 2 ways. First, what we can do is, like we're used to, is what we do. We do the what's inside the parentheses first. So if we were to do here, let's do it both ways. Let's write the way you know right away. Okay, so that it'd be 4 times 2, wouldn't it? Okay. 4 times 2 is 8. So that's one way to do it. Okay. So that should be pretty straightforward. And you might be thinking, what's another way? I don't understand. I thought we were supposed to do in the parentheses first. Well, we are, but when you have the number outside of a parenthesis, there's a trick. Well, not necessarily a trick. It's called the distributive property. And they call that because we can spread out this 4 to everybody, which means we take the 4 and we can multiply it by 5 and -3. Okay, and see what we get. So this is the distributive property, 4 times 5, and then we could either say, I'm looking in how the book would tell us, we can either say, 4, this is how they do it, 4 times -3. Okay, so that is 20, and then this is basically plus -12, or we can just write -12, and we get 8. Okay, is that what we got before? Yes, we just did it 2 ways. Now you might look at this and be like, why would I do this? This looks like a lot more work. This was a lot quicker. You're right, but later on some of these are going to be variables or letters in here, and so we're going to use this a lot. Okay, so let's talk about what it means in the fancy math language definition. Okay, here's the definition. For the distributive property, what it means is for any numbers, if A, B, C, these represent any number or group of number. If you have one on the outside and some on the inside, you can also take it apart and multiply the one on the outside by everything on the inside. So you take the outside, multiply it by every term on the inside. All right, let's try apply this. Example 17.1. Use the distributive property to find the value of this answer. Now, yes, it would be simpler to just figure out what's in there first and then multiply it by 4. But they're just showing you we're doing this to practice the idea. So distributive property, we're going to distribute this 4. We're going to distribute it to the 6, the -2, the 5, and the -7, and then add them all up. So we take 4 times the 6, and then plus 4 times the -2, plus 4 times the 5, plus 4 times the -7. Okay, so you see this 4 has been distributed to everybody. Okay, and now we'll take care of each of those multiplications. Okay, this is 24. This is -8, right? So we can just write -8. For those of you who might still be struggling with that idea, you don't need to write plus -8. Okay, this is 20. Okay, and then this is -28. And again, I like to see my negatives. They're right there, and my positives. So I'm going to put my positives together, then I'm going to put my negatives together. So my positives, 24 and 20, make 44. And -8 and -28 make negative, we combine them, 36. Okay, and then we subtract or add the opposite, and we get 8 as our answer. Okay. Example 2. Use the distributive property to expand mn times the quantity. This is how we say that. Mn times the quantity x plus y plus 2p. Phew. Okay, so all we're going to do is distribute this to everybody now. So, and when you multiply letters together, you do not need to put parentheses. So if we multiply, and a lot of times I do this little thing, have him do an arrow to everybody, if you can see that. So mnx is what happens when we multiply mn times x. Okay, plus mny. Plus, now we like to keep the coefficient on the outside. The 2 likes to stay in the front, is what I'm saying. Letters like to stay in the front. And so then we have m, n, p. So do you see how basically we did this. Right? And then I take the 2 and put it in front and then list the letters together. Okay. Now 17.3 example, very similar to this one. They just have the letters on the quantity that we're going to multiply by on the other side of the parentheses. That's okay. This means the same thing as this. I'm just rearranging because of basically the commutative property of multiplication, that this and this chunk can switch spots and it means the same thing. So now it looks a lot like this one up here. I just put him out in front, okay? And so now we're going to take these, the MP, and distribute to each of these. So again, we get MPX, so we multiplied it by the x, and then MP times negative 3y. Well, remember, I like to have the coefficient out in front, so it's going to be negative 3 MPY. Make sure you see how I got that. Okay, and then now I've got 4 letters. I'm just M, P, X, Z. And you might think, okay, now what? That's it. That's the answer. Okay. Example 4. Use the Use the distributive property to expand this. So when it means expand, same thing as what we did up there. Negative 3 times this and negative 3 times this. Okay, so let's be really careful. Negative 3 times a positive 2x. Well, we multiply the coefficients together. That is negative 6x. Make sure you know how I got from here to here. Basically, in my head, I was doing this. Negative 3 times 2x. Right? Well, the x can't do much because it's an x, so we get this. Okay? And then the other is negative 3 times negative 4, isn't it? Right? If that's what's happening up here. Negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. And that is it for the answer. Okay? Sorry about the dog barking. We're just going to have to push through and roll with it. All right, this is the practice. So I really want you guys to try this and make sure. So it says evaluate, just follow the directions. The first one says evaluate by adding, then multiplying. So that means take care of in here first. The next one says multiply, then add. So we're going to do 4 times 5 and 4 times negative 3. And then we're going to use, see if you can remember the distributive property. It was on the first page, but use the letters A, B, and C to write the distributive property in parentheses. Try your best on that. Then D says when we multiply first, we say we are using the distributive property. Use the distributive property to evaluate the answer to this. So that was where we distribute the 4 through to everybody. And then these are just like the last 2 that we did. So I want you to try those and then check and see if you did them correct. I'm going to go ahead and do them now. Okay, I'm going to add, then multiply. So that's 4 times 2, which is 8. Okay, now on this one, it's multiply first. So we get 20 minus 12. So 8. Those should be the same. They are. Because it's a law, so it always is the same. It's a law, or a property, which is a law. Okay, I'm going to use this and say, all right, A times the quantity B plus C is the same as if I multiplied A times B and also multiplied the A and C and add them together. Okay. We're going to use a distributive property to do this. So that's 4 times 6 plus 4 times negative 2 plus 4 times 5 plus 4 times negative 7. And we get 24 minus 8 plus 20 minus 28. And I swear that's the same as the one that we did in the examples. So that kind of throws me off. 6 minus 2 plus 5. Yeah, that's exactly the same. So I'm kind of surprised by that, but hopefully you guys get the same answer. It is the exact same that we did in the exercises. Anyway, so I put those together and got 44, and those together and minus 36, and I get 8. Okay, this one, we're going to multiply 2m times xy. So I get 2mxy. Now I'm going to multiply 2m times negative 3p, which gives us the 2 and the negative 3 multiply together. So that's minus 6mp. Generally, we keep the letters alphabetical, not always. Okay. This one, yeah, see, I would put the a in front. So if I did xy times a, I would do axy, just because it's alphabetical order. They don't always follow that pattern, but I like it better that way. Okay, the next one would be plus bxy minus 2cxy. So you notice the xy combined with everybody. And that is it on this. We're going to use it a lot. This, like, so much hinges on the distributive property that if this was difficult or you got stuck on any of this and need you to call me or email me and show me you can text me a picture, which has been working, and I can videotape you a text video. I can video and then send it via text right back and with answering your questions. So let's go ahead and use that.